September 19th, 1959, Los Angeles. The most powerful communist on earth stands at a podium in the 20th Century Fox commissary, his face flushed with rage. Around him sit Hollywood's brightest stars, Marilyn Monroe, Frank Sinatra, Elizabeth Taylor. But Nikita Khrushchev, premier of the Soviet Union, leader of 200 million people, commander of thousands of nuclear weapons, cares about none of this glamour.
Here to the city, I was given a plan, a program of what I was to be shown and whom I was to meet here. But just now, I was told that I couldn't go to Disneyland. I asked why not, and just listen to what I was told, to what reason I was told. We, which means the American authority, cannot guarantee your security if you go there. What is it? Do you have rocket launching pads there? I don't know. What is it? Is there an epidemic of cholera there or something? Or have gangsters taken hold of the place that can destroy me?
His voice rises to a shout. His fist pounds the podium. What you just saw is the reason for one of Soviet Russia's biggest fails ever written in the history books. You see, Khrushchev was rejected entry to Disneyland. He was angry, disappointed, and moreover, he had a plan. This is Blueprint. 600 million rubles, 260 hectares of Moscow countryside, 300,000 daily visitors. These numbers would define the Soviet Union's answer to Walt Disney's capitalist fantasy, a socialist wonderland that would showcase the superiority of the communist system, a park where Soviet children would journey through their motherland's glory from the Far East to the Baltic, experiencing the triumph of collective achievement over American individualism. It was approved, it was funded. The best minds in Soviet architecture and science fiction were assembled. Specialists were dispatched to America to study the enemy's techniques. And then, like so many Soviet dreams, it vanished, leaving behind only blueprints, propaganda, and the persistent question of what might have been. The seeds of the Soviet Disneyland are planted in a moment of pure humiliation. Nikita Sergeyevich Khrushchev arrives in the United States on September 15th, 1959, the first Soviet leader to set foot on American soil. He brings his wife Nina, his children, even his son-in-law. This is unprecedented. Soviet officials don't travel with families, but Khrushchev wants to show a human face to the Cold War. 4 days into his 11-day tour, his plane descends toward Los Angeles International Airport. Khrushchev has specifically requested to see two things in the City of Angels, Hollywood and Disneyland. The Magic Kingdom, opened just 4 years earlier in 1955, has already become a global sensation. Even behind the Iron Curtain, rumors spread of this fantastical place where technology and imagination merge. But as his plane approaches LAX, Khrushchev receives word. He can visit the movie studio. His family might see Disneyland. But the premier himself, impossible. Los Angeles. Police Chief William Parker claims he cannot guarantee security for the 30-mile journey to Anaheim. The motorcade speeds from the airport, pelted with tomatoes by protesters. At the Fox studio, Khrushchev watches con-can dancers kick their legs, their 19th century bloomers flashing. He calls it vulgar. Studio president Spiros Skouras, a Greek immigrant made good, lectures him about American opportunity. The tension builds. Then comes the note. Mrs. Khrushchev, sitting with Bob Hope, writes in Russian to her husband. She's been told even she cannot go to Disneyland now. It's the only place she wanted to see. The premier explodes. Then Khrushchev started the speech that you saw in the beginning. The Hollywood elite shift uncomfortably. Frank Sinatra leans over to David Niven. Marilyn Monroe watches wide-eyed. The American press focuses on this tantrum, not his prepared remarks that evening. Political cartoons mock him. Headlines scream about the communist who couldn't see Mickey Mouse. But Khrushchev boards his train to San Francisco that night with something more than wounded pride. He carries an idea. If America won't let him into their fantasy, he'll build his own. Moscow, 1960. Snow blankets the western edge of the city, beyond the new apartment blocks, where the countryside still holds sway. Here, on 260 hectares of frozen earth, an area 4 times the size of Disneyland, Soviet surveyors mark out the boundaries of what will become Strana Chudez, Wonderland. The project emerges from Khrushchev's direct order upon returning from America. If the Americans have their capitalist playground, the Soviet Union will have something grander, something that reflects the true spirit of socialism. Not a celebration of individual fantasy and corporate characters, but a journey through the collective achievement of the Soviet peoples. The best architectural minds in Moscow are summoned. Science fiction authors Alexander Kazantsev and Ivan Yefremov, men who imagine Soviet futures among the stars, are brought in to envision attractions that blend education with wonder. Specialists are quietly dispatched to the United States, traveling as tourists, taking notes on everything from crowd flow to cotton candy machines. The design is audacious in its literalism. The entire park will be shaped as a map of the Soviet Union. Visitors will enter from the Soviet Far East, a symbolic journey from sunrise, and travel westward through their vast nation. In the Okhotsk Sea section, an underwater kingdom will plunge visitors to the ocean floor in bathyspheres, surrounded by massive aquarium walls teeming with Pacific marine life. The Ussuri region will house a tremendous zoo featuring Siberian tigers and Far Eastern leopards. Moving west, families will traverse miniature Siberian forests, experience the heat of Central Asian deserts through climate-controlled pavilions, feel the Arctic wind of the tundra zone. Each region will showcase its achievements: the Virgin Lands campaign in Kazakhstan, the hydroelectric dams of Siberia, the oil fields of the Caspian. At the park's heart rises the centerpiece, a scale model of Moscow so detailed that visitors can identify individual buildings, watch tiny cars navigate the streets, see miniature citizens going about their daily lives. The model will be 60 meters across, showing not just what Moscow is, but what it will become under communism. The plans call for hotels themed to different Soviet republics, stay in a Ukrainian cottage, a Georgian mountain lodge, a Uzbek palace. Restaurants will serve cuisine from all 15 republics. Children will ride rockets to space stations, celebrating Soviet superiority in the cosmos. They'll board miniature trains that recreate the Trans-Siberian Railway's 9,000-kilometer journey in 30 minutes. The budget is a staggering 600 million rubles. To put this in perspective, the average Soviet worker earns 85 rubles per month. A new car, if you can get one, costs 3,000 to 5,000 rubles. This single park will cost the equivalent of 120,000 automobiles. But Khrushchev declares it a Komsomol shock construction project, a designation reserved for nuclear power plants, massive dams, entire cities. This isn't just a park, it's a statement to the world. Construction is scheduled to begin in 1961. Opening day is set for May 1st, 1965, International Workers' Day. The park will accommodate 300,000 visitors daily in summer, 200,000 in winter. These aren't random numbers. They're calculated to exceed Disneyland's capacity by a factor of 10. Spring 1961. The first construction equipment arrives at the site. Drainage ditches are dug. Foundations are mapped. The Moskovskaya Pravda publishes enthusiastic articles about the children's paradise rising on Moscow's edge. At the All-Union Research Institute of Cultural Facilities, architects labor over increasingly elaborate designs. The entrance plaza alone will dwarf Red Square. A monument to Soviet childhood, a massive sculpture of young pioneers, will greet visitors. Mosaic murals depicting the friendship of Soviet peoples will line covered walkways, protecting guests from Moscow's harsh weather. The technical challenges are immense. How do you recreate a tropical Sochi climate in the middle of Moscow winter? How do you build aquarium walls strong enough to withstand the pressure of millions of gallons of water while allowing clear views for thousands of daily visitors? The Soviet engineers, fresh from triumphs in space, attack these problems with confidence. Special committees are formed. The Ministry of Culture oversees content. The Ministry of Construction handles infrastructure. The Communist Party's Central Committee reviews every major decision. Khrushchev personally reviews the plans, making notes in his distinctive scrawl, "More rockets, bigger, show them what we can do." By 1962, the first funds are officially allocated. The initial tranche represents the largest single investment in entertainment infrastructure in Soviet history. Foreign delegations are quietly shown the plans. East German architects take notice. Polish engineers offer suggestions. Even the Chinese, not yet fully estranged, send observers. But beneath the surface, tensions simmer. Conservative members of the Politburo question spending such sums on entertainment when housing is still short, when agriculture still struggles. Khrushchev dismisses them. This park isn't just entertainment, it's education. It's propaganda. It's proof that the Soviet system can provide both necessities and joy. The premier's son, Sergei, later recalls his father's obsession with the project. At dinner, Khrushchev sketches ride concepts on napkins. He describes a roller coaster that will trace the path of the October Revolution, carrying riders from the Winter Palace to the Finland station. He imagines a fun house where children can experience the disorientation of capitalist economics, emerging grateful for central planning. 1963 arrives with ground finally broken. Concrete is poured for the first foundations. The scale model of Moscow begins construction in a specially built workshop. Artists start painting the first murals. Western intelligence agencies note the activity. CIA satellites photograph the site. Analysts puzzle over what appears to be a massive construction project with no apparent military or industrial purpose. Some speculate it's a new type of missile base, camouflaged as civilian infrastructure. Meanwhile, Soviet specialists return from their third fact-finding mission to America. They have visited not just Disneyland now, but Coney Island, Pacific Ocean Park, Six Flags over Texas. They bring back detailed reports on queue management, ride capacity, food service efficiency. One report, marked Secret, analyzes the psychology of American theme park design, noting how capitalism transforms even leisure into consumption. By early 1964, steel frames rise from the Moscow earth. The skeleton of the underwater kingdom stands 40 feet tall. Railroad tracks for the Trans-Siberian ride arc across the frozen ground. The project employs 3,000 workers, working in shifts through the bitter winter. Soviet newspapers begin preparing the public. Pravda runs features on the coming Wonderland. Children write letters asking when they can visit. Teachers prepare lessons that will use the park for geography, history, science education. October 14th, 1964. Everything stops. The Central Committee meets in emergency session at the Kremlin. Khrushchev, vacationing at his Black Sea dacha, is summoned back to Moscow immediately. He thinks it's about agriculture. It's always about agriculture these days. The failed harvests, the virgin lands turning to dust. But when he enters the room, he sees their faces. Leonid Brezhnev avoids his eyes. Alexei Kosygin studies his papers. Nikolai Podgorny stands to speak. The charges are numerous. Voluntarism, violation of collective leadership, harebrained schemes. The words hang in the air like a verdict already delivered. The Virgin Lands campaign, a failure. The Cuban Missile Crisis, reckless adventurism. The split with China, unnecessary provocation. And then, almost as an afterthought, they mention it. This fantasy park in Moscow, 600 million rubles for children's rides while Soviet citizens still share communal apartments. Khrushchev argues, shouts, pleads, but the vote has already been taken in secret. By evening, Radio Moscow announces that Nikita Sergeyevich Khrushchev has requested retirement due to advanced age and deteriorating health. Within 48 hours, the Wonderland construction site falls silent. Workers are reassigned to housing projects. The steel frames stand like skeletons against the gray October sky. Security guards are posted to prevent looting. The new leadership under Brezhnev acts swiftly. A commission is established to review all of Khrushchev's voluntarist projects. The space program survives. too much prestige is at stake, the housing campaign continues. Too many promises have been made. But Wonderland is classified as economically irrational. Documents reveal the brutal efficiency of the cancellation. On October 23, 1964, just 9 days after Khrushchev's removal, Order number 1847 is issued. Cease all work on the Moscow Cultural and Recreation Complex, Wonderland. Reassign all materials to priority construction projects. Destroy all propaganda materials. Classify all planning documents. The workshop creating the Moscow model is shuttered overnight. Artists working on the murals are told to paint over their work. The specially imported American ride mechanisms purchased through third parties in Switzerland are redirected to smaller parks in Kiev and Leningrad. But you cannot simply erase 260 hectares of construction. Local children who've watched the strange structures rise for 3 years sneak through gaps in the fence. They climb the half-built roller coaster tracks. They play war games in the empty pools meant for the underwater kingdom. For them, it becomes a different kind of wonderland, a concrete playground of abandoned dreams. The architects and engineers are reassigned, but many keep their plans. In apartments across Moscow, in desk drawers and hidden folders, blueprints for the greatest theme park never built are carefully preserved. Some hope the project might be revived. Others simply cannot bear to destroy 3 years of their lives. Ivan Yefremov, the science fiction writer, incorporates ideas from the park into his novel The Hour of the Bull, a dystopian vision of Earth's future where abandoned pleasure parks stand as monuments to humanity's failed ambitions. Readers don't realize he's writing about a real place, or nearly real, where Wonderland should have stood. Apartment blocks rise. The Soviet Union needs housing more than it needs roller coasters. Families move into flats built on foundations meant for the Siberian forest exhibit. Children play in courtyards where the model Moscow was to spin. But Khrushchev's dream doesn't completely die. It fragments, scatters, transforms. In East Berlin, the German Democratic Republic opens Kulturpark Planterwald. It's smaller, more modest, but it carries echoes of Wonderland's ambition. The park features a 45-meter Ferris wheel, the largest in the Eastern Bloc. There are rides imported from the Soviet Union, some say originally destined for Moscow. East German families flock there. 1 million visitors a year at its peak. The park becomes the only permanent amusement park in East Germany, a tiny pressure valve for a pressurized society. But it's haunted by what it's not. There's no journey through the socialist motherland, no underwater kingdoms, no model cities. It's a provincial echo of a metropolitan dream. In Moscow itself, the exhibition of achievements of the national economy, VDNKH, expands. Some of Wonderland's educational exhibits are quietly repurposed here. A space pavilion opens in 1966, incorporating rocket ride designs from the cancelled park. Agricultural exhibits use interactive displays originally conceived for Wonderland's Kazakhstan section. But VDNKH is not a theme park. It's a trade show made permanent, a place where fun is incidental to ideology. Children might enjoy the fountains and the ice cream, but nobody pretends this is the Soviet answer to Disneyland. While Moscow's Wonderland remains frozen in imagination, the capitalist world's theme parks multiply exponentially. Disney opens Walt Disney World in Florida in 1971, 27,000 acres, making even Khrushchev's ambitious 260 hectares seem quaint. EPCOT Center follows in 1982, ironically featuring a world showcase where nations display their cultures, not unlike Wonderland's planned Republic pavilions. The Soviet Union is notably absent from Epcot's opening roster, though China, still communist, surprisingly agrees to participate. In 1983, Tokyo Disneyland opens, the first Disney park outside America. The Oriental Land Company pays for everything. Disney just licenses its characters and expertise. The model proves communism's supposed advantage. Central planning means nothing if you lack the intellectual property the characters, the stories that make people dream. By 1985, when Mikhail Gorbachev takes power and introduces glasnost, Soviet newspapers finally begin mentioning the old Wonderland project. Izvestia runs a reflective piece, The Park That Never Was. Veterans of the project are interviewed. They speak carefully, still uncertain what's safe to say. The Soviet Union collapses. Archives open. Historians discover the full scope of Wonderland, finding documents thought destroyed, plans thought lost. The details that emerge are staggering. There were plans for a monorail system that would have been the largest in the world. Design documents show restaurants where animatronic Lenin would give speeches while families ate. A capitalist house of horrors was sketched out, where children would experience the chaos of market economics through disorienting mirrors and tilting floors. Most poignant are the letters, thousands of them from Soviet children writing to Khrushchev, then to Brezhnev, asking when the park will open. Dear Comrade Khrushchev, writes 8-year-old Natasha from Sverdlovsk in 1963. I am saving my kopecks to visit Wonderland. My teacher says it will be better than the American park. When can I come? The responses are form letters, growing vaguer over time. First, the park will open soon. Then, construction continues. Finally, silence. Former construction workers are tracked down. One, Pavel Dmitrievich, now in his 70s, shows a reporter a piece of steel he took from the site. I worked on the Cosmos section. We were building a launch pad where children would ride rockets to a space station. I kept this when they told us to stop. I thought surely we'd go back. He produces a faded photograph. Workers posing in front of a half-built structure, smiling, unaware that within months their work will be demolished. Post-Soviet Russia tries repeatedly to create its own theme parks, but the ironies accumulate like snow. In the 1990s, as capitalism arrives, Moscow's parks are privatized. Gorky Park tries to add rides, but they're cheap, dangerous, Ukrainian-made. A roller coaster derails in 1993, injuring 12. The Russian press notes that even in their new capitalist freedom, they cannot build what the communists dreamed. China, now communist in name, but capitalist in practice, opens a Communist Party theme park in Wuhan. It's not Wonderland, it's smaller, more explicitly propagandistic. Visitors can take oaths to join the Communist Youth League. Cartoon Red Army soldiers smile from playgrounds. The park features a map of the Long March, where children can retrace Mao's strategic retreat as adventure. Western journalists mock it, but it exists. It was built. People visit 3 million in the first year. Vladimir Putin himself opens Dream Island, Moscow's first major theme park. It cost $1.5 billion, features European fairy tale characters under license, and was built by Turkish contractors. The opening ceremony takes place on February 29th, a leap day, as if acknowledging this leap took too long. Critics on social media are savage. The castle centerpiece is compared to Disneyland's and found wanting. It looks like Disneyland ordered from Wish, one tweet reads. Another, 60 years late and still wrong. But the deepest irony, Dream Island is enclosed under glass domes to protect against Moscow weather, exactly as Wonderland's designers planned in 1960. The solution was always obvious. It just took 6 decades and a change of entire political systems to implement. Beyond the wasted rubles, the abandoned steel, the disappointed children, Wonderland's failure carries human weight. Alexei Leonov, the first human to walk in space, reveals in his 2004 memoir that he was consulted on Wonderland's space section. He designed a zero-gravity room where children could experience weightlessness. I wanted every Soviet child to feel what I felt, he writes, to know that space belonged to them. The design was never built, but years later, he sees similar attractions at Space Camp in Alabama. The Americans built what we only dreamed. He notes, without bitterness, only sadness. The lead architect, Dmitry Chechulin, who had designed 7 of Moscow's Stalinist skyscrapers, considered Wonderland his chance at redemption, at creating something joyful after decades of imposing monuments. His assistants recall him working 18-hour days on the project, sleeping in the studio. When it was cancelled, he never designed another major project. He spent his remaining years teaching, showing students the Wonderland plans as examples of architecture without limits. There are the workers, 3,000 of them at the peak. Many were young specialists, recent graduates who believed they were building the future. Viktor Petrovich, a hydraulic engineer, designed the underwater kingdom's water systems. After the cancellation, he was assigned to sewage treatment plants. From bringing wonder to children to processing their waste, he says, there's a metaphor there, but it's too depressing to explore. Wonderland never opened, but it haunts Russian culture like a phantom limb. In 1972, the Strugatsky brothers published Roadside Picnic, science fiction about a zone where alien visitors left incomprehensible artifacts. Critics later note similarities to the Wonderland site, abandoned structures whose purpose becomes mysterious, zones where the normal rules don't apply. Andrei Tarkovsky's 1979 film Stalker, based on the Strugatsky novel, features characters navigating a prohibited zone to reach a room that grants wishes. Film scholars point out that Tarkovsky scouted the abandoned Wonderland site in 1976, though he ultimately filmed elsewhere. The metaphor is almost too obvious. Soviet citizens navigating the ruins of utopian promises, searching for a room where dreams come true. In the 1990s, Russian artist Ilya Kabakov creates an installation, The Palace of Projects. It features architectural models of never-built Soviet structures, including a recreation of Wonderland's entrance based on discovered blueprints. Visitors walk through rooms of abandoned dreams. Western critics call it a monument to monuments never built. Moscow punk band Wonderland Died forms in 2001, taking their name from graffiti found on apartment blocks built on the park's site. Their song 600 Million Ways to Say No becomes an underground hit. The lyrics are all rejections, all the ways the Soviet system said no to joy, to spontaneity, to wonder. Even in 2023, Russian social media regularly shares what-if artistic renderings of Wonderland. Digital artists use AI to generate images of what the park might look like today. The images go viral. A Soviet Disneyland, complete with brutalist architecture and heroic worker statues, but also with roller coasters and cotton candy. The comments are always the same mixture: nostalgia for something that never existed, anger at what was taken away, wonder at what might have been. A final cache of documents is discovered during renovation of a Moscow apartment building, the former home of Boris Mikhailov, deputy director of the Wonderland project. The papers, hidden behind a false wall, include correspondence that was supposed to be destroyed. They reveal the project's final days in heartbreaking detail. October 15th, 1964, the day after Khrushchev's removal. Mikhailov writes to his superior, "The workers are asking if they should continue. What do I tell them? We are so close. The underwater kingdom needs only glass. The rockets are ready for installation." October 17th, orders came to stop. I asked for 1 month to at least complete the entrance, plaza, to leave something. Denied. October 20th. They're taking the steel today. 3 years of work being hauled away on trucks. The model of Moscow. They say it will be burned. I begged them to give it to a museum. They laughed. October 23rd. Final day. We gathered at the site, all of us who worked on it. Nobody spoke. What was there to say? We built the future and the present cancelled it. The most revealing document is a letter Mikhailov never sent, addressed to Khrushchev in his forced retirement. Nikita Sergeyevich, they've killed your Wonderland, but I want you to know what we would have built. Children would have entered through a gateway of stars, walked paths lined with flowers from every republic. They would have ridden your Trans-Siberian Railway, sailed your underground sea, climbed your rockets to space. They would have seen themselves not as Muscovites or Georgians or Ukrainians, but as Soviet citizens of the future. It would have worked. I know they say it was folly, but it would have worked. In a different world, it is working. Somewhere, Soviet children are laughing in your Wonderland. While Moscow's children never got their Wonderland, the capitalist theme park industry explodes into a global phenomenon worth hundreds of billions. By 2019, Disney operates 12 parks on 4 continents. The company that Khrushchev tried to answer generates more revenue than many nations' entire GDP. Tokyo Disney sees 18 million visitors annually. Shanghai Disney, opened in 2016 in still communist China, required delicate negotiations between Disney and the Chinese government, not unlike the plans for Wonderland, except this one actually happened. The Shanghai park makes concessions to Chinese communism. There's no Main Street USA, it's replaced by Mickey Avenue. The park features uniquely Chinese elements: a tea house, gardens designed according to Feng Shui principles, attractions based on Chinese zodiac. It's what Wonderland might have been, a Western concept adapted to local ideology, except it exists. Universal Studios, Six Flags, Cedar Fair, corporations Khrushchev couldn't have imagined, operate hundreds of parks. Europe has Europa Park, Efteling, Alton Towers. Even small nations have major parks. Denmark's Tivoli Gardens, Sweden's Liseberg, South Korea's Lotte World. The model Khrushchev glimpsed in 1959 becomes the standard. Intellectual property drives emotional connection. Emotional connection drives spending. Spending drives expansion. It's capitalism as experience, exactly what the Soviet premier feared and tried to counter. Modern Russia keeps trying to build what Khrushchev imagined, but each attempt feels like a diminished echo. Dream Island, despite its glass domes and climate control, lacks ambition. It licenses foreign characters: Hello Kitty, the Smurfs, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Nothing is inherently Russian. Visitors note the irony. Putin's Russia, with its emphasis on national greatness, builds a park filled with American and Japanese characters, while Khrushchev's international communism planned something uniquely Soviet. There's Sochi Park, opened for the 2014 Winter Olympics. It's themed around Russian fairy tales, closer to Wonderland's spirit, but it's small, regional, built primarily to impress Olympic visitors. It has a fire-breathing dragon and attractions based on Slavic folklore, but no grand narrative, no journey through the nation, no educational component beyond Russia has fairy tales too. Russian oligarchs occasionally announce grand theme park projects. In 2018, one promises the largest indoor theme park in the world in Moscow. The renderings show generic attractions that could be anywhere. By 2020, the project is quietly cancelled. No one is surprised. The pattern repeats. Announcement, renderings, silence, cancellation. It's as if Wonderland's ghost haunts every attempt, making failure inevitable. What does it mean that the Soviet Union couldn't build a theme park? Some historians argue Wonderland's failure represents communism's fundamental inability to understand joy. Central planning can build dams, launch satellites, even win wars. But can it create wonder? Can a command economy command happiness? Others see the opposite lesson. Khrushchev understood something his successors didn't. Socialism needed to compete not just in steel production or nuclear weapons, but in the realm of dreams. His Wonderland was an attempt to prove that collective society could create individual joy, that planned economy could plan fun. The park's design, a literal map of the Soviet Union, reveals the project's deeper purpose. This wasn't escapism like Disneyland, where visitors flee reality for fantasy. This was reality transformed into fantasy, the Soviet Union as the adventure. Children wouldn't dream of being princesses or pirates. They'd dream of being cosmonauts and dam builders. Russian philosopher Mikhail Epstein writes, Wonderland was to be the Soviet Union perfected, where every journey ended in triumph, where every exhibit taught pride, where every ride lifted you higher. Its failure to exist is perhaps more honest than its existence would have been. China announces its latest theme park project, a massive complex in Beijing celebrating socialism with Chinese characteristics. It will feature a journey through China's development from the Long March to space exploration. Educational exhibits will mix with thrill rides. A scale model of Beijing will showcase urban planning achievements. Russian media notes the similarities to Wonderland's original design. Chinese officials, when asked, claim no knowledge of the Soviet project. But researchers find evidence of Soviet archives accessed by Chinese delegations in the 1990s. The blueprints Khrushchev commissioned, rejected by Brezhnev, destroyed by bureaucrats, hidden by workers, may finally be built, just 2,000 miles east and 60 years late. The park is scheduled to open in 2025. Capacity 300,000 daily visitors, the exact number Khrushchev planned. Dawn breaks over Moscow, where Wonderland should have stood. Apartment blocks cast long shadows. Children wait for school buses where roller coasters were meant to climb. Office workers drink coffee where the cosmic carousel would have spun. But in the Russian imagination, Wonderland exists more powerfully than any real park could. It's become the perfect Soviet achievement. Forever potential, never disappointing, always just about to open. Every Russian theme park that fails is measured against it. Every success elsewhere reminds of its absence. The numbers tell one story. 600 million rubles wasted, 260 hectares unused, 300,000 daily visitors who never came, 0 rides built, 0 children delighted, 0 dreams fulfilled. But there's another calculation, harder to quantify. How many Soviet children grew up knowing their society promised them wonder and then withdrew it? How many architects, engineers, artists learned that imagination was conditional, subject to political review? How many dreams were smaller because this large one failed? And yet, perhaps there's strange victory in failure. Disneyland exists, ages, updates, commercializes. Its magic is quantifiable, packageable, reproducible. Shanghai has one, Paris has one, Tokyo has one. The formula works everywhere, which means it's specific nowhere. Wonderland exists only in blueprints and memories, in what-ifs and might have beens. It remains forever perfect because it was never tested. It stays revolutionary because it never became routine. Every Russian can imagine their own version, their perfect park, their socialist paradise of fun. Is that worse than reality? Or is it the most Soviet outcome of all, the eternal promise of tomorrow? The future that's always arriving but never quite here. Khrushchev died in 1971, 7 years after his removal from power. His memoirs, smuggled to the West and published posthumously, mention Wonderland only once. They said, "I wasted money on dreams." But what is socialism without dreams? What is any system without joy? I wanted Soviet children to have what American children had. No, better than what they had. A place where imagination was collective, where fun had purpose, where every ride taught them who they were and who they could become. He never saw Disneyland. The closest he came was that September day in 1959, standing at a podium in Los Angeles, raging about an injustice that was really about something larger, about respect, about equality, about the right to dream in any language, under any system. The Soviet Union is gone. Khrushchev is gone. The Cold War ended, though its ghosts linger. But somewhere in archives and attics, in memories and imaginations, Wonderland waits. A communist Disneyland that never opened, never closed, never disappointed, never grew old. It remains what it always was, a monument to ambition, a testament to failure, a reminder that even totalitarian systems dream of making children happy, that even in the grayest bureaucracies, someone is sketching roller coasters, that even failed dreams leave traces, like radiation from a reactor that never achieved fission but somehow still glows. The capitalists won the Cold War. Their theme parks circle the globe. Their mouse ears are recognized from Moscow to Beijing, from Sao Paulo to Cairo. By every metric that matters, revenue, attendance, cultural impact, Disney's vision triumphed absolutely. Except for this, no one makes documentaries about theme parks that succeeded exactly as planned. No one writes poetry about rides that operated on schedule. No one dreams about parks they actually visited as children, only about the ones they couldn't. Wonderland failed, and in failing, achieved a different kind of immortality, the immortality of the incomplete, the power of the potential, the strange victory of never finding out if the dream was possible. Somewhere, perhaps, in a parallel universe where small moments went differently, where security was assured for a Disneyland visit, where Khrushchev served his full term, where 600 million rubles seemed reasonable. Wonderland opened on May 1st, 1965. Soviet children ride the cosmic carousel. Families journey from the Pacific to the Baltic in an afternoon. The underwater kingdom reveals its secrets to thousands daily. The model Moscow spins endlessly, showing citizens their capital in miniature perfection. In that universe, this documentary is about something else entirely, perhaps about a capitalist wonderland that was never built, a democratic dream that bureaucracy killed, a different ghost haunting a different system. But in this universe, our universe, we have only the ghost, beautiful, terrible, teaching us that sometimes the most powerful monuments are the ones that were never built. The most enduring parks are the ones that never opened, and the most perfect dreams are the ones that never risk the disappointment of becoming real.